It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wise discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
All right. Hello there, everyone. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. Thank you so much for waking up with Wesley. All right, so there's a lot of sunshine out there this morning, and if you've been out and about, you might have noticed that it's a bright Thursday morning on the Mississippi coast. However, the UV index is extreme. Do you know what that means? Let's get to the details about the UV index and talk about that a little bit more. So here's a look at that UV index forecast for today, which shows that number is higher than, it's at 11 or higher. So it's actually a 12, and that's actually the highest that I've seen so far this year. So this is some pretty extreme UV index, and it's a measure of how much of that sunshine is going to be affecting you as you are out and about. It's really quite a bit of sunshine out there, and you might want to remember a hat, sunglasses, as you got to protect yourself from this stuff. So there's a look at some of the information as far as UV index is concerned. An extreme risk means that there's a harm from unprotected sun exposure. That risk is extreme for that. Whenever the UV index is extreme, the risk is extreme. Some people can get sunburn in just minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. It doesn't take very long. So if you're going to be outside for an hour or more, you absolutely have to bring the sunscreen. Generally, it's recommended that you apply SPF 30 or higher sunscreen. And one other thing that trips people up is if you're out and maybe you're sweating or you're swimming, that can help the sunscreen to lose some of its effectiveness. So don't forget to reapply often, at least every 2 hours that you will be outside. You probably need to put on a fresh coat of sunscreen. And like we said earlier, sunglasses, wide-brimmed hats, all of that go a long way. You know, if you're out at the beach, I'm always bringing my beach umbrella so that I can have some shade. I'm not just sitting directly in the sunlight. I really need to invest in one of those canopies that it just sets up, and you can set your whole chair under it and you have all of this shade. And so that way, if I'm feeling like I'm getting too much sunshine, I got plenty of shade to escape and take a break, give my body a break from getting overheated and such, and then you can go back into the sun later. Now, that's what the pattern is going to be as we go through the next few days. The rain chances are not going to be terribly high, and so there will be an opportunity, I think, for the UV index to stay pretty high, either very high or extreme. This is a look at the next 3 days. So you have 3 days worth of rain stacked on top of each other. Thursday's rain and Friday's rain and Saturday's rain, 3 days on one map. And you can see some holes in the rain coverage, right? Not everyone's seeing rain over the next 3 days. We call this type of coverage hit or miss. So it's not, some big washout. It's not very widespread. There's some breaks in between each shower. Now, that pattern is expected to change as we go to next week. So even though for now, the next few days, our rain coverage might only be hit or miss, keep an eye on this trend as we move from this week to next week. Our rain lines from our computer models, you got 2 different computer models that go out into the long range, the GFS and the European, and they both show little to no rain amount for Thursday, generally in South Mississippi, specifically in Gulfport. Generally, not much rain on Friday, and generally not much rain on Saturday. But once you go to Sunday and beyond, those lines really take off, right? We're seeing quite an increase in rain activity Sunday into next week. Now, the models disagree on exactly how much. Just for one spot, just for Gulfport, you got the GFS model kind of slow and steady, tacking on a little bit of rain each day, a little bit on Sunday, a little bit on Monday, a little bit into Tuesday, a little bit more into Wednesday. And it looks like out of all of that, you come up with about an inch. But then the European model brings a slam dunk for Sunday into Sunday night, and then it still brings a pretty decent increase into parts of Monday, next Tuesday, next Wednesday. totaling to about 3. We can show you this on a map. So that was like a pinpoint forecast for one spot, like Gulfport. But if we broaden it out and you can see multiple locations, you can see much of Mississippi sharing in a wet setup from Sunday into next week. This particular model, the GFS, shows the southern half of Mississippi with more than 2 inches of rain in some places. Now, you could get more specific than that, but again, these are long-range models. They don't have a lot of high resolution, so they don't see a very high-definition picture when you go too far out into the future. So we don't need to get too specific with the information. We'll just kind of generalize. Generally, in the southern half of Mississippi, more than a couple of inches of rain. Now, ask a different computer model, and you actually get a pretty similar picture. Over the general southern half of Mississippi, you still see about 2 inches of rain or more in some places. So that's certainly much more than this short-term model, which goes from now through Saturday, and you don't see 2-inch totals pretty much across most of our 6 southernmost counties. There's only a few places that see a little bit of rain, but definitely not everywhere. We can get, I think, a more zoomed in picture with that particular model. So here's a more zoomed in picture with our high resolution model, and we can see that there's some places like Diamond Head with a 1/2 inch of rain, but there's some places, for example, past Christian, where maybe the rain completely misses out from now through the end of Saturday. So very hit or miss. But instead of it being hit or miss, it's more widespread is what I like to call it going into next week. So putting it all together for you, that is what we're watching, that trend from a hit or miss rain pattern for now to a widespread rain pattern for next week. Other than that, talking temperatures, it's going to feel like summer because it's turning more humid, and we are going to see a slight increase in temperature too. So, oh, and by the way, it might have you asking for a pop-up shower with how it's going to feel with that summer feel. You might be wanting a hit or miss storm at times over the next few days. And don't forget to have your cameras at the ready, because we could get some hazy sunrises and sunsets with Saharan dust beginning to fill the sky at some point over the next 2 to 3 days. We'll see it in our skies along our horizons. You saw a little bit of it this morning with this morning's sunrise over Biloxi. That was the view from the Beau Rivage looking off toward Jackson County, a very bright sunrise. And our forecast for today calling for plenty of sun, but also some of those pop-up showers and storms. See those temperatures around 90, well, upper 80s to lower 90s today? I want to show you what the temperature forecast is and what I mean by how things are going to kind of heat up here. Of course, depending on your location, could be different, but in general, a place like Ocean Springs today, a high around 87, 88. They're south of I-10. A place like Wiggins or Perkinston today, a high around 90 or 91. They're inland, north of I-10, farther away from the water. And you can see, look at tomorrow, Wiggins could be at 93. Saturday, Wiggins could be in the sizzling mid-90s, 94 for the high. But even coastal places like Gaucher, we're going to see that increase as well. Pascagoula, Long Beach, areas in Biloxi and Gulfport that are south of I-10, Bay St. Louis, Waveland, all those coastal areas, you might get to 91. It'll be one of the hottest days of the year so far going into Saturday. So that is something that, again, might have you asking for some rain. Speaking of rain, here's a look at today's rain map, and you can see the chance this morning around 30%. It increases to 40% heading into this afternoon. So you may want to have an umbrella handy in case we see some of those popping up. And you can see as we go to the afternoon later, 4 p.m., still seeing that 40% chance, although it does decrease to 30% or less by the time we get to 6, 7, and 8 o'clock. And some of you might be wondering, we keep forecasting rain chances. Are we even seeing any rain? And the answer is yes, but not everywhere. Over the last few days, you can see there has been some rain in parts of South Mississippi. Today's Thursday, and for example, yesterday on Wednesday, we did see some rain. Look, I'll show you this a bit more zoomed in on your screen. You can see there was a pretty good downpour somewhere between Big Level and Bendale yesterday. And we had some spotty showers over Harrison County, including one right there near the Jackson-Harrison County line, And we also saw some rain in the morning in parts of Gulfport and Biloxi yesterday. Now Tuesday, looks like that was a day when most areas missed out. And then on Monday, we had a huge downpour. Look at that bullseye of red. That was more than 2 inches of rain somewhere just to the southwest of Poplarville in Pearl River County. Although the rest of the area missed it, right? This is hit or miss. And that's what we're talking about with the coverage so far this week. And that continues for Thursday. It continues for Friday. I do think by the time we get to Saturday, you might see even fewer showers. But then things pick up. Remember how we will possibly transition to a wetter pattern heading into Sunday and next week. So something to watch out for. Even though today some people are going to get sunburned, by the time we get to next week, there's actually going to be a low risk of flooding Sunday into Sunday night. There's a level 1 out of 4 risk of flooding. So we're kind of seeing our weather all over the place here. In June, you can get a mixed bag, all types of things, whether it's hot, whether it's rainy. You can get a mix of both of those in summertime around South Mississippi. Well, that'll pretty much do it for our Thursday edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. We'll see you again next time. Take care.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.